Because from an evolutionary standpoint, if we're out hunting, we're always gonna go after the biggest and baddest animal we can find with the most fat. Basically, the smaller the animal, the less desirable it is. It breaks my heart to say this because I love sushi, but fish is really toxic these days. Now, we're talking about quite possibly eating the most nutrient-rich and bioavailable foods on the planet. We kinda look like red meat. Again, like supports like. Animals, especially apex predators like lions and killer whales, inherently know this, by the way. I can't believe I'm now eating animal testicles. Not all animal protein are created equal. There's actually a hierarchy. So in this video, I'm going to show you the best type of animal protein you should be eating every day to maximize fat loss, improve your overall health, and longevity. And make sure to stick around until the end because I'm going to show you a very specific type of meat you should be consuming because it's easily the most nutrient-rich food on the planet. It's the superfood of all superfoods. These are the exact same tips that I give to all my coaching clients, and they've all gone to see some amazing results. So you know it works. And if you're interested in working with me, you can book a free consultation by checking out the link somewhere at the top here or in the description below. Before we get started, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to get notified every time I post a new video every week. It really helps support my channel. Alright, let's get into it. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I am a big proponent of an animal-based diet while incorporating the least toxic plants that your body tolerates like honey, fruit, and some tubers. Hunter-gatherers like the Hadza in Tanzania follow that exact dietary pattern and they're very lean and healthy. They also don't suffer from modern Western diseases like diabetes, obesity, cancer, or cardiovascular disease. I try to use the Hadza as an example in a lot of my videos because they basically offer a small window of how we should be eating as humans. They're like a time machine. But as always, there are levels. Not all animal protein are created equal. There's actually a hierarchy of things. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, if we're out hunting, we're always gonna go after the biggest and baddest animal we can find with the most fat. Because that can feed us for days. Like our ancestors would bring down megafauna back in the Paleolithic times. The Inuits in northern Canada would hunt seal. And if you've seen what a seal looks like, they're thick. Well, the Hadza's perfect day is to bring down the biggest animal they could find. And if you think about smaller animals like a rabbit, it's very small and it's got little to no fat. But we need essential fat in our diet. It actually takes fat to burn fat. It's like a Kickstarter. And in extreme cases, you can actually die from eating just rabbit. It's called rabbit starvation because of protein toxicity without carbs and fat. Basically, the smaller the animal, the less desirable it is. So if you think about the types of meat modern humans consume, chicken would probably be at the bottom of that pecking order. Pun intended, it's just a small and weak bird. And if you think about quality when it comes to chicken, the texture of the meat just isn't as good. There isn't as much fat and the meat isn't as palatable, especially if you compare it to a ribeye steak. You can get sick of eating chicken easily, especially if you're eating the typical bro diet of plain grilled skinless chicken breast and broccoli. It's super bland. A great way to test if you're really hungry, by the way, is if you think about eating boiled chicken breast. You'll know right away if you're really hungry or you're just bored. Problem solved. But if you look at a grass-fed and grass-finished ruminant like a cow or a bison, which is the original superfood, they're also majestic-looking animals. That is as close as you're gonna get to a wild animal without having to hunt the meat. Unfortunately, 99.99% of chickens, especially in North America, are fed corn and soy to make them as big and as fat as possible. Some of these chickens can't even walk because they're so fat. That's another reason why you should not be consuming a lot of grains in your diet. If they're used to fatten up animals, what do you think that does to our human body? I'm just not a fan. The chicken that you can get at your local grocery store aren't wild chickens. Those chickens aren't eating bugs and worms. They're just not eating what they should be eating. They're eating grains. And again, we don't want to feed chicken grains. Same thing with pork that just lives in a small pan all its life. Listen, I take my fair share of shots at vegans and for good reason. It's really nothing but a modern day human experiment on what would happen to humans if you took away the most nutrient dense and bioavailable foods on the planet, which are meat and organs. You have to be perfect with your supplementation to even have a chance at being healthy on a vegan diet long term. But just search vegan decay after watching this video if you want to know exactly what I'm talking about. It's pretty scary. But if there's one thing that I actually align with them, is that we need to move away from conventionally raised meat and make the switch to regenerative agriculture as a society. Because as the name implies, it regenerates the environment. It's amazing because it's actually carbon negative. It's really the only sustainable way to feed the planet, unless you want to start eating insects and bugs. I'm not into it. Regenerative beef agriculture means that the rancher is doing rotational grazing using ruminants to replenish the topsoil. It's better for the animal and the environment. It's way healthier because the cow only eats its natural diet of grass and it supports ecosystems. A bunch of things can coexist. Kiss the Ground is a great documentary on why we actually need ruminant animals to replenish the topsoil if you want to know more about this topic. By the way, do you know what actually destroys the topsoil? Monocrop agriculture, like corn and soy. That's why it's so important to vote with your dollars. And while we're in this environmental topic, in the US, the majority of the greenhouse gas is 80% industry, electricity, and transportation. 80%. Like, if we're really worried about the environment, you should not be eating that avocado that came from Mexico as a vegan. You also shouldn't be driving a car then, or flying. Like, it's just silly. And a very small amount, like I'm talking 9%, comes from agriculture. And then cows specifically represent a fraction of that 9%. And if the cows come from regenerative agriculture, then they're actually carbon negative. Going back to pigs and chickens, because they're monogastric animals like us, they accumulate polyunsaturated fatty acids or PUFAs from their corn and soy feed. Especially with pork, because it accumulates excess linoleic acid in the pork fat. Ruminants like cows, on the other hand, are amazing because they have this special ability to turn PUFAs into saturated fat. It's most likely because they have 4 chambers in their stomach. That's why the vegan argument that, just take out the middleman, meaning the cow, is silly because you don't have the digestive system of a cow. You might look like one though. There's evidence that our hunter-gatherer ancestors had a 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in their diet. You're still okay with a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio, but our modern-day diet ratio is 1-to-15. That is an excessive amount of PUFAs in our diet, and it causes nothing but problems to the human body. That's why I'm completely off the carbohydrate and insulin model of obesity bandwagon. Carbs alone does not cause insulin resistance, especially if those carbs are coming from a food matrix. But if you feed a pig or chicken grains, which is what 99% of chickens and pigs are fed, that you can buy at your local grocery store, again, that's how they get fattened up before slaughter. Therefore, their fat is going to have more linoleic acid at around 20%. For comparison, tallow, which is ruminant fat, only contains 2% linoleic acid, and it's also very high in beneficial stearic acid. You can also find stearic acid in suet, which is liver fat, but that's why I'd much rather get my dietary fat from grass-fed and grass-finished beef and butter. Because the more linoleic acid is in your diet, whether you're consuming it directly or indirectly, the worse it is for weight loss and metabolic health. Listen, I love bacon just as much as the next guy, but that's why I don't recommend eating it every day. Personally, I eat bacon once a week. And if you've been following my channel and you're on a low carb or keto diet, but your weight loss has stalled, maybe you're also eating a lot of almond butter and nuts, which are full of an anti-nutrient called phytic acid, which slows down the absorption of nutrients. Maybe you're also going crazy on the bacon and olive oil. There's a very good chance that excess linoleic acid in your diet is playing a big factor when it comes to your weight loss plateau. There's definitely a proper ratio between the amount of linoleic acid and stearic acid in your diet. I personally think that the more stearic acid and less linoleic acid points you towards weight loss. If you go the opposite, it's going to lead to weight gain and poor metabolic health. And again, the main linoleic acid sources are industrial seed oils, aka vegetable oils, like canola, corn, safflower, sunflower, grapeseed, rapeseed, and rice bran. You can bet that all restaurants use that cheap oil to deep fry their products because they're dirt cheap. Healthy salad dressings are notoriously high in those toxic seed oils. That's why reading labels is a superpower these days. I'm probably gonna get some angry messages here, but even the vaunted olive oil is suspect these days because they're often tampered with seed oils, or they've most likely gone rancid once they've reached grocery store shelves. There's actually a documentary about the olive oil mafia corruption. The Italians call it agro mafia. Basically, a lot of the olive oil we import isn't as pure as it seems. Or maybe it'll say olive oil blend in the bottle, but then you look at the back and it's 50% canola oil. Brutal. And people drizzle this stuff on their salads, thinking that it's healthy. The gold standard is first cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil if you really want to keep consuming it. But I still wouldn't make it a part of my daily diet because olive oil still contains 15 to 20% linoleic acid. And because of that high linoleic acid content, the olive oil that's been sitting in your pantry for the last 6 months is most likely rancid because of oxidation. Sorry. Now, let's talk about fish and other types of seafood. It's a problem. It breaks my heart to say this because I love sushi, but fish is really toxic these days. Unfortunately, as humans, we've polluted the oceans a lot. There's this thing called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is just sad. And the bigger the fish gets, so the longer it lives, the more metal it accumulates. There's also a lot of questionable practice in a lot of third world countries where they inject some sort of gel in prawns to make them bigger. Like, I would not want to put that in my body. Farmed fish is another very questionable industry where a lot of the fish are just swimming in these very tiny enclosed areas and are often swimming in their own filth. Something like 90% of the salmon consumed in the US are farmed Atlantic salmon. So if you see that on the menu, it doesn't mean that it came from the Atlantic. No, that's just the type of nasty farm variety. If you're gonna keep consuming fish, try to eat small, cold water, oily fish like sardine, anchovies, mackerel, and herring. If you can find wild salmon from a good source, fine, but I still wouldn't recommend making it a part of your daily diet because there are so many examples of people like Robbie Williams, Victoria Beckham, Howard Stern, and Tony Robbins that went full pescatarian because they get brainwashed into thinking that red meat is bad. And after a little while, unsurprisingly, they all end up with heavy metal toxicity. Those people presumably had access to the most expensive fish, and they still got mercury poisoning. My point is I'd rather eat a ruminant that's eating what it's supposed to eat, like beef, bison, or even lamb, its entire life, because that animal only has one bad day, if you know what I mean. That's why 95% of my animal protein comes from grass-fed and grass-finished beef or bison. I also eat pastured eggs with orange yolks and some organ meat. But even grass-fed but grain-finished beef is still infinitely better than conventionally raised pork and chicken. So don't fret if you can't find grass-fed and grass-finished beef. But they're very easy to find these days. Just do a quick Google search in your area. Now, if you go one step higher and start eating nose to tail, and I mentioned suet earlier, which is the fat in beef liver, now we're talking about quite possibly eating the most nutrient-rich and bioavailable foods on the planet. This is the top of the hierarchy. Grass-fed and grass-finished beef liver alone has something like 80 micronutrients. It's widely considered to be the most nutrient-rich food on the planet. Going back to the Hadza in Tanzania, they treat liver like gold. The Inuits in northern Canada also eat the seal organs first. And there's this concept of like supports like in Chinese medicine, and the magical coenzyme Q10 or CoQ10 gets mentioned a lot in the biohacking space because it's good for the heart. Guess what food contains the highest amount and most bioavailable form of CoQ10? Beef heart. In fact, here's an exchange between me and my local bison supplier. Dr. Paul Saladino, aka Carnivore MD 2.0, has been raving about eating testicles and how it just supercharges hormone production and sexual health. So now I have to try it. I can't believe I'm now eating animal testicles. The interesting part is consuming beef ovaries and uterus works for women as well to support hormonal balance, improve menstrual dysfunction, and increase fertility. Again, like supports like. If you've ever been cut open or you watch videos of people in surgery, we kind of look like red meat. Again, like supports like. This almost makes too much sense, right? Animals, especially apex predators like lions and killer whales, inherently know this, by the way. They will always go after the organs first after a successful hunt because they know how nutrient rich they are. If you've ever seen a pack of wolves hunt, the alpha always gets first dibs on the organs. And by the way, if you're new to the organ meat game, a happy medium to start with is by taking desiccated organs in the form of a pill. I'm not affiliated with them, but Heart and Soil, which is owned by my hero, Carnivore MD 2.0, makes amazing organ supplements that combines a bunch of these organs I mentioned. But you only really need half an ounce to an ounce a day. It's just the size of a quarter. Just put it in your mouth and drink a bunch of water. And for the millionth time, no. Eating red meat is not bad for your kidneys. It does not cause cancer. There is no good science to support that. Those claims have now been massively debunked. Any study that claims that red meat is bad usually comes from plant-based activists. It's very emotional for these people to eat animals. They get triggered. They have ruined that word forever for me. They're like a mouse with a megaphone. These claimed experts use something called epidemiology, which is just observational research. Unfortunately, that's what entertainment films like What the Health and Game Changers use for their overreaching health claims on why you should go fully plant-based. And at the same time, they use these observational studies to throw shade at red meat. Observational research is where they give people questionnaires about what they ate, as if anybody can remember what they ate last week. But that type of study can really only establish correlation. It cannot establish causation. And it can be so misleading for people because of healthy user bias. Because if you torture the data enough, you can make correlations about anything. According to TylerVigan.com, and this is hilarious, there's a correlation between the number of people who drowned by falling into a pool and movies Nicolas Cage appeared in. I mean, maybe. I don't remember the last time he was in a good movie. There's also a correlation between per capita cheese consumption and the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. Like, what? Does that sound like good science to you? So if somebody tries to impose their agenda on you, you should ask them nicely where they get their information from. You should immediately start running the opposite direction if they say they watch Game Changers, What the Health, or Cowspiracy on Netflix. If they mention that they saw a study, ask them if it's an observational study or a randomized controlled clinical trial. Interventional studies, which is the latter, is the gold standard. And if we're talking about real numbers, the relative risk between eating red meat and cancer is 1.1. For it to be clinically significant, it has to be above 2. For context, smoking and lung cancer is at a whopping 12. Those are hard and fast numbers. What I'm trying to say is there is a lot of noise out there when it comes to nutrition. That's why it can be so confusing. But back to animal protein hierarchy. Listen, if you're starving, eat chicken if it's all you have. If it's Thanksgiving and you're going over to someone's house, eat the turkey. If it's the holidays and there's only ham on the table, eat it. It's not worth the social repercussions of being that person when you're at a social gathering. But I'm personally not gonna eat chicken or pork if there are other options like beef. Again, there's a hierarchy. Make sure to always vote with your dollars. Now, if you're someone who's been struggling losing weight for years, you've tried every diet under the sun, you've cut the fat, you've gone on a calorie deficit diet, you work out every day, but you just can't seem to lose the weight, or maybe you're feeling stuck because you've hit a weight loss plateau and you can't seem to get out of it, you can't find answers, and you realize that it's time to get one-on-one professional help, then feel free to reach out to me. Just head on over to my website, newbiefitnessacademy.com/coaching, read through the page and the success stories, and fill out the application form for a free consultation. If I think that we're a good fit, then I'll personally reach out to you directly. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post a new video every week, and feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions about this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Virtual high five.